The first episode of Andor starts off by revealing the fact that it takes place in the year BBY5, but apart from its obvious relation to the Battle of Yavin and Rogue One, why is this specific year so important for the wider Star Wars universe? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the show's ever-expanding timeline and the mysterious corporate zone, so let's dive straight into it. First off, Andor's place in the Star Wars timeline. Despite acting as a bridge that's eventually meant to kickstart Rogue One, Andor's personality still manages to shine through. Sure, it's dark and gritty like the movie it precedes, but it also has the heart of your typical Star Wars show. With that said, it still feels very much like its own thing within the greater universe, and yet at the same time, it's building a narrative that's going to have an impact on literally the entire galaxy. The point is, there's a lot of nuanced stuff happening within the show at the same time, a lot of which is super easy to miss. For instance, this year that it takes place in, BBY5 has a ton of significance in the universe. Now, if you're not familiar with the timeline conventions in the franchise, BBY means before the Battle of Yavin. So essentially, this show takes place 5 years before the rebellion victory in A New Hope. Where does it stand in relation to some of the other shows, though? After all, the galaxy is pretty big, and as we've seen in the newer episodes of Andor as well, there's a ton of rebel activity scattered across vast distances. Well, the closest thing to this would be the animated series Star Wars Rebels. In fact, both of these take place during the same year. Obi-Wan Kenobi, on the other hand, starts off around 4 years before the first episode, and of course, the Bad Batch and Jedi Fallen Order are even farther behind. Since Andor is going to have a couple of 12-episode seasons that are going to lead into Rogue One, we shouldn't expect things to ramp up very quickly. Of course, we're still getting plenty of action, especially the whole rebellion espionage stuff. It's just that all-out war probably isn't the name of the game here. Having said that, we shouldn't expect that out of this show either, as it exists for totally different reasons. For starters, this is all about depicting the weakness of the Empire and how their pride ate them from the inside. In fact, at one point, Cassian even explains how easy it is to infiltrate their buildings and walk straight in just because they wouldn't expect someone like him to have the gall to do so. And that's exactly what the show is based around as well. On top of that, we also get a glimpse at the Empire's middle management and how their workplace dynamics come into play for this bigger set piece. Oh, and they're just not shown as faceless evil people either. They've got all their motivations and human tendencies that make the show such an incredible watch. Take Cassian's first heist mission, for example. His group plans the thing around a natural phenomenon that's kind of like a meteor shower. Why? Because all the Imperial soldiers want to take time off and just go look at it. Then again, there's still that deeply rooted villainy and pride within them during these moments as they casually talk about the genocide that they've just committed, not to mention the beginning of the rebellion. Of course, all of this is shown with the backdrop of the rebellion actually coming together, with characters like Mon Mothma trying to piece together an organized effort against the evil regime. Now, you may say that we've seen the same trope in Star Wars a billion times before, and you'd technically be right, but the sheer detail and the human aspect of things in Andor is just something we haven't seen in any other media so far. We're not getting big lightsaber battles or an all-out war. Instead, it's just a bunch of people forming these pockets of rebellion across the galaxy. You've got to remember, though, that we're still 3 years off from the formation of the Alliance, because that's kickstarted by Mon Mothma's resignation from the Senate, and we're sure that we'll see that happening at some point later in the show as well. But for now, the rebels are basically scattered all over the place and don't even have a united cause to fight for. Sure, they all despise the Empire, but their reasoning is all over the place. Lieutenant Gorn, for example, betrays his own employers just because they killed a local Aldhani woman that he loved. Don't get us wrong, we're not saying that these aren't valid motivations for these characters, it's just that they're not fighting for the quote-unquote cause just yet. That's the thing, though. Andor sheds light on each of these characters to show that it takes years for a revolution to boil over, and the only thing that matters is your will to fight. Let's look at what else was happening in 5 BBY. Well, the formation of the rebellion is definitely the main thing that Andor tries to focus on. There's also a lot of other stuff that's happening around the galaxy at the same time. As a matter of fact, the year 5 BBY is explicitly mentioned in multiple other Star Wars media, including Rebels and, of course, Rogue One. Let's talk about the animated series first, though, as it runs pretty much parallel to Cassian's story, and honestly, you can draw some similarities as well. For instance, as Cassian's making his way up to Aldhani to join up with the rebel crew, Ezra Bridger's also becoming a part of the Ghost crew. Not only that, but we also meet some of the characters that appear in Rogue One, like Chopper, who plays a pretty pivotal role in the Battle of Scarif. Plus, there's the whole arc with R2-D2 and C-3PO meeting the crew, which of course leads to Bail Organa taking part in the Alliance's formation. On the other side of the galaxy, Jyn Erso just got abandoned by Saw Gerrera, and this has major repercussions down the road during Rogue One as well, as there's a good chance she wouldn't have been involved in the fight at the end had she stayed with Saw. So in a way, 5 BBY is the point where all these characters kickstart their destiny, which obviously is to steal the Death Star plans and facilitate the rebellion's major win against the Empire in A New Hope. Now for the corporate zone situation in Andor. Andor does a brilliant job of connecting all these pieces together to form a coherent narrative that'll run through to Rogue One. But there's still one aspect of the show that goes largely unexplained. Of course, we're talking about the corporate zone, which is a sector of space that hasn't really been explored properly in movies or TV shows. Now, you've probably noticed there aren't many stormtroopers marching around in the show. Also, while they're definitely present in the Imperial bases, their threat doesn't seem to be very direct and is rather nebulous. And that's just because the show doesn't stray very far from the corporate zone. What exactly is it though? Well, initially it was formed during the dying days of the Republic as an area where galactic companies would dictate the laws more effectively than they could in the Senate. Oh, and they were definitely aligned with the Separatists during the Clone Wars. That said, they were allowed to operate independently even during the Empire's reign, although they did get regular reminders that this freedom could get revoked at any time if they step out of line. After the Alliance won the war though, there was essentially no bigger power overseeing this region. Finally, have we seen the corporate zone before? Okay, so the corporate zone is an independent region that's operated by the CorpSec Authority. Sounds simple enough, right? Then why does it almost feel like something that's definitely not going to end well? Well, that's because this place is actually a haven for war profiteers who play both sides and fill their pockets. As a matter of fact, George Lucas tried to introduce these themes into the Clone Wars as well, even though they were probably way too subtle for anyone to notice. That said, we did eventually end up getting a proper glimpse into the region in The Last Jedi when Finn and Rose travel to Cantonica, which is also a part of the zone. Over there, they visit Canto Bight, which is a big city with wealthy tourists, gamblers, and of course, war profiteers who operate in massive casinos and racetracks. And it's kind of like the Vegas of the galaxy, except that law enforcement is essentially non-existent. Then again, Andor isn't concerned with any of this, as during the show's timeline, the Empire still got a pretty strong grip on the whole region, and we wouldn't be surprised if we actually see it pushing a direct presence in the zone to prevent any rebel activity. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think we'll see the formation of the Alliance in Andor? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.